I've been playing Doom the Dark Ages early thanks to Bethesda sending me an early copy, and as of today we're allowed to give our impressions for the new Doom game, so you'll probably see a bunch of early gameplay videos pop up. I'm not going to have any spoilers here, I'm like 25 hours in and just over halfway through, but we're only allowed to even show cutscenes from the first few chapters out of the whopping 22 levels this game has in it. There are some really cool levels that I'm not going to show. If you don't plan on playing the game for yourself, I'll go deeper into everything in my actual review, but even though this is just an impressions video, you can pretty much use it as like a spoiler-free review. And man, this is some of the sickest shit I've played in a while. I truly think this has set like a new bar for AAA action shooter games, the bar probably being previously set by Eternal. And I think this will be a bit of a controversial game with all of the changes, kind of like how Eternal was when it came out, but still loved by most people. And at the end of the day, if you had fun with the last two games, especially 2016, since it was a bit more of this pace, you'll love the Dark Ages just as much, maybe even more. If you didn't like either of those games, you probably won't like this. A lot has changed, but it's still the same type of game at its core, and I mean that in a good way. It has that medieval coat of paint on it with new weapons and a shield that will sometimes have you feeling like you're facing God of War Ragnarok's Berserkers, just in first person, but the majority of the game is still that same fast pace, never lets up, non-stop action that makes these games so much damn fun. And that shield is probably the biggest thing that makes the game's pace feel entirely different. Eternal took 2016's gameplay to simulate kind of like what's going on in an ADHD person's brain. The Dark Ages definitely dials that back a bit, and it might seem slow in comparison, but it's only in comparison to that game. Once you get going, it feels like you can make the gameplay as fast as kind of like you want it to be. You still need to be a bit more tactical with your shield, parrying Hell Surge attacks, which is basically any green attack that pops up, which shoots the attack back at enemies, and without spoiling anything, you eventually will be able to like upgrade so much of your shield that those parries have different upgrades and effects that can make them even better. You have the shield saw that you can use to interrupt attacks or stun the beefier enemies, or just completely tear through all of the smaller cannon fodder enemies that are in your shield's way. And some of the upgrades revolve around that, like an upgrade that makes it so that after shield sawing multiple small enemies, your shield gets a buff to it that makes the damage a lot higher on the next shield charge. I forget what the shield charge is actually called, but you can use that charge as like a huge way to keep the combat fast-paced, because you can shoot this thing from like across the map basically. Not really, but it's a pretty long distance. But a huge benefit also comes from taking your time to parry everything. That is like your bread and butter. Parrying those attacks back does a lot of damage, it keeps you from getting hit, and it keeps your shield from burning out, because if you just sit there and block attacks, it breaks your shield and then you're left open like crazy. If you don't have your shield, they're just gonna tear through you, at least in some of these stronger enemy encounters. But while the Dark Ages still holds that like same Doom feel that the games have had since the reboot, it feels like a mix of both the new games with the old ones. Like right when the first level started, something with how the enemies moved made me feel like I was playing the old games. I don't know what it was, but it especially felt like that in the early game when you're kind of like getting the hang of things. It's not just that Doomslayer facial icon at the bottom of the screen either. Which, by the way, you can even go into your settings to turn that into the classic version, and also make the UI like 50% smaller or a lot bigger. But besides that old kind of feel, the Dark Ages also takes Doom to an entirely different level. You probably have already heard of some of the other combat and traversal methods that I won't even show here. Again, man, please play this for yourself, at least first. It's on Game Pass, Xbox, and Game Pass PC. If you have the premium upgrade, you get it on the 13th instead of the 15th, but at least give it a try on Game Pass on the 15th, or whenever, because some of those levels are really cool, and it feels like a big change of pace when you do run into a level that isn't just the same old blasting everything in your path thing that you've been doing for the last few hours. And I think those levels come up just enough for you to switch things up and make you feel refreshed. I'd say probably 80% of the game is just first-person Doomslayer combat, and the other portion is like a next level to Doom. The levels in general vary in such a huge degree. I took my time with each one, hunting down all of the secrets and collectibles, and some of the levels went anywhere from like maybe 20 to 30 minutes, most of them closer to 45 to an hour. And a couple of them might have taken even closer to 2 hours. If you want to speed through objectives and not really explore, you can probably knock these levels out in half of the time it took me. Because that's the thing, a lot of the levels give you a big semi-open world area with multiple objectives, and you can head straight for those by just smashing your way through, or you can spend time looking at the map or looking around every crevice in case you missed anything. The map will show any nearby collectibles that you've gotten pretty close to. If that part of the map is uncovered, it'll display an icon for the collectible, secret, or gold if there's any there. And dude, I was looking everywhere for these. There were parts of the game where I thought I for sure 100%ed it, and then in some of these bigger missions I end up missing one or two things. Gold is used for weapon upgrades, shield upgrades, and melee weapon upgrades, and the game hands out weapons just as frequently as the last ones. As you grind through, it's always like, holy crap, another weapon already? There's enough to where the combat never feels old, because between each weapon you're also using that gold, or for higher level upgrades, you'll find different stones or jewels that give you those higher tier upgrades, some of them having different upgrades that you can toggle between at that level. And then mastery challenges that unlock once that weapon is fully upgraded, which reward you with new skins. You'll also find weapon skins throughout some of the levels. There aren't any microtransactions, if you're wondering about that. There's also no multiplayer or snap map, I think it was called. It's straight up just single player if you weren't already aware of that. Health, ammo, and armor are all found throughout the world, but the majority of the time you'll be getting them from enemies. Your melee weapons will give you health and armor. It really depends because the upgrades that you get, some of them offer armor or ammo from enemies in different ways. But it's very rare that I'll have to like scour the map for ammo and health and all of that. Usually I'm running past a lot of it. The enemy variety is pretty big. I haven't crunched the numbers, but I think this game might have the most enemy types out of any of the Doom games. Some of them returning from previous games and some of them completely new, at least I think. I'm not huge into the Doom lore, but I have not seen some of these guys before. I saw a lot of people not liking how slow the enemies are, but from my experience, it just really depends on the enemy and that combat scenario in general, plus the difficulty. Because some of the time you're just getting gangbanged by multiple enemies and some of them are a lot faster paced than others. There are enemies that will drive you nuts with long range shots, while at the same time people are going absolutely ham on you close range. Most enemies also do different attacks once you get in close. Like if you run in close to someone, they are almost always going to instantly attack you, and some of those attacks are pretty easy to parry, others just feel like they come out of nowhere. But the close range fights are my favorites, and they're the most satisfying when you're able to actually land every parry that you get the opportunity to. All of that also depends not only on the difficulty, but also all of the different difficulty adjustments and the sliders that you can mess with. For my first run, I've been playing on Ultra Violence, which is only like the third of the 6 difficulties. I think I'm pretty average at these games, and Ultra Violence feels like an average difficulty. I've definitely had my fair share of deaths, but it's never felt impossible. I'm always confident that I'll get past whatever section I just died at. I don't ever feel stuck, and most of the time when I die, it's just because I wasn't paying attention to my health and I was just being reckless. The sliders and difficulties adjust anything from like how hard you get hit, how hard you hit, how aggressive those enemies are, I think also how many enemies, as well as the parry window. There's a lot to adjust here. Ultra Violence's parry window is just above half on the little meter that it shows, but that still feels super generous of a parry window. Parrying in Ultra Violence has never felt anything close to hard. Maybe some of the closer ranged melee fights, but for the most part, it feels pretty easy. That's like the biggest reason I'm not ready for Ultra Nightmare difficulty yet though. You also have sigils that you can find around the map. I think these were in Eternal already, or at least some variation of them, but you can use those to instantly respawn at full health once you die. But once you use those, they're gone. If you die again and then choose to reload your checkpoint, that sigil is still gone and you can only collect 3. So you have to use those very sparingly. Like you have to be pretty confident that when you use that sigil, you're going to get past this section, otherwise it's completely wasted. And one of the only negative things I really have towards this game is the glory kills. They have definitely dialed it down, which I think they already put out there a while ago, or at least it became obvious once we seen the gameplay. I mean, glory kills are still there, they exist, but are a lot less frequent. They're still just as brutal when they do happen, but the majority of the time you go press E to do a glory kill, and it's just a quick wallop on the head, or an animation that you've already seen in like the 2016 game. But yeah, subscribe for more Doom the Dark Ages videos. I will at the very least have a couple more of these up, as well as some Oblivion videos. I would have already had some more of those, but Bethesda decided to send me the Dark Ages early, and I have just not been able to stop playing it. It's a lot of fun. But yeah, see ya.